This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table, with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Folks, welcome to the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark, your co-pilot.
And I am Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac.
Woohoo! What's up, brother? How you doing today?
Every day is a good day.
Every day above ground is a good day.
You know, they say on the right side of the lilies.
Yes, on the right side of the lilies, right? I'm not pushing them up. So I was going to ask you, do you have any business ideas? Like, do you have any, I don't know, call them inventions or whatever you want to call it, like a business idea that you've ever thought about actually starting? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I was with a friend the other night. He got an inheritance. Okay. It's a sizable amount of money. And so we're out having a beer, and he's just like, I want to start something, but he doesn't have an idea, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's asking me, do you have ideas? And in my lifetime, that I can remember, I'm sure I've come up with several, but there's two ideas that I had. And I was wondering, do you have an idea for a business? Something that doesn't exist maybe, or something that maybe a modification of something that exists?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. Not currently. Okay. So your friend, was he leaning on you for extra ideas, or?
Yeah, he was like, if I had anything. So I have two ideas. And I don't think one of them I don't think is that viable. The other one I think is possibly viable, but it requires somebody that knows about interest rates. You would probably actually be able to say,
I'm excited to hear this.
Right, that could actually maybe work. Okay, so the first idea is a basic idea. I had an idea, in my head I called it Zero Tube. So it would be like an app, right? So here's the app. It would basically, if you go on the app and you open it and you watch YouTube videos, it doesn't allow you to search for any YouTube videos. It just takes you to a video that has not been watched yet. So every video you would watch would be 0 views. You'd be the first one to watch it. So I know.
How did you even come up with this idea?
I have no idea how I came up with the idea, but it had to be spun off of TikTok, because I see these kids, they'll watch like a 15-second video and they're just scrolling video to video to video to video, right? And I'm thinking, well, what if the video is, maybe a certain genre? It's all dance videos, or it's all, I don't know what kids, I don't deal with TikToks. So I'm not sure what these kids really watch. But that's what came to me, is like, well, what's kind of an original thing or whatever? And I said, what about videos that have never been seen before? So you would be the first person to actually watch the video. So I thought, like, well, that's cool. And my first thought was, I call it Zero Tube. So you would just be scrolling from one video to the next, and they're all zeroed out videos. Okay. The reason I don't think it's viable is, one, I don't know how people even make money on apps. I know there's a way to do it, obviously, because they're making billions of dollars. The other thing is that I realize that any video that has 0 views is probably really, really, really shitty.
Or some like obscure topic that nobody would ever search for.
Yeah.
Or something that someone didn't put any of like the hashtags in, that can't be found anyway. It's like on a personal server or something that doesn't tie into the algorithm.
Yeah. I also thought, like, and I looked it up on Google, videos with 0 views, and there's really not, I can't find anything specific to this idea. So it's like, how do you even find a video that has no views? Like, even on Google, looking up, I'm trying to find videos that have 0 views.
Is that even a search string?
Well, I mean, I just looked up like YouTube videos with no views.
Okay, and something popped up?
Well, there's things that pop up about that, like, but again, nothing is saying like, oh, go here and you can find a video that has no views. And I'm assuming it's something that, I don't know if it would be hard to search, because I could upload a video. I have no YouTube presence, so if I uploaded a video, it likely wouldn't have any views, but eventually somebody's going to stumble across it, and I'm going to get a view, maybe 2 or 3 or whatever. Right. So even asking Google, give me a video that has 0 views, by the time I even found the video, who's to say it already hasn't been watched once or twice? Like, it seems like, I don't think a video with 0 views would last that long.
Is this more of like the Omegle, like you don't know what you're going to get, Russian roulette style?
Oh, totally.
It might be like old obscure Simpsons references. It could be some just nature scene, a flower wilting in the sunlight or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of really bad videos on YouTube that don't have a lot of views, and I don't know why the algorithm will push this, up to me, but most of them are just really poorly done. So it's like you look at a YouTube video and it's got like good camera work and good audio and all that kind of stuff. And then what you find with ones that don't have a lot of views, it's, just crappy lighting, grainy, guys doing it right off his cell phone, or just, maybe you did
old Nokia.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe like I don't even know.
Palm
if it's like
Pilot.
It's just, Palm Pilots. Maybe not something like that. Just like, it's just, there's no content. Like, so I could pick up the phone right now and go live like on YouTube. And what am I say what, and then it's just like, well, why do we want to listen to nothing? Like, I don't have anything to say. It's not like it's coordinated or scripted or produced or put together. So the stuff that I have seen that doesn't have a lot of views, they're really, really lousy videos. So that's the problem I would have with the zero tube idea, is that like, I don't know how much somebody would get out of it, because I think they would see one just horrendously bad, pointless video after another.
They get discouraged after the third scroll.
Yeah, and just like, why am I bothering with this, right? And it's not like you're going to see anything cool or interesting. I mean, I guess it's possible. Even Joe Rogan, when he first started his podcast, the first day he had it up, he had 0 views, right? So I guess it's possible you could stumble across somebody who's just started something and it's done well, or has, some construction to it. But I just don't think I don't think that's the majority at all. Okay,
so wait, you said there's 2 ideas. So there's zero tube, and now I feel like needs to be a drum roll for whatever this second idea is going to be.
Yeah.
We need one of those sound effects of Indiana Jones whip cracking.
My other idea, and like I said, this is probably more in your arena. So again, one of the things that's been going on is about student debt, right? So I was trying to figure out a solution to the student debt problem. And I think I came up with something that at least sounds on the surface kind of viable, but I don't think it would actually work. And again, I think this would deal with maybe in your arena, understanding loaning people money and interest rates and things like that for long periods of time, right? So if you're, obviously if you're 30-year loan or whatever, and I know when a loan is given out anyways, they're sold to somebody else or sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and that's kind of how it rolls. So the concept is this: instead of taking your standard government subsidized loan or whatever it is that you get, when you go to college, whatever you decide to take, that there would be individual investors that would say something to this. This is a basic idea. We'll pay for 5 years of college, your tuition, your books. Maybe that's as far as it would go, living expenses and things like that, that you would have to be responsible for that. But whatever the cost of the school, and that may include dorms if you decide to stay in the dorms, right? Okay. And we're going to take a percentage of your lifetime earnings. A small percentage. I don't know what that percentage would be to make this viable, if it would make sense to do it. And let's say, what's the retirement age? 65, 67?
65.
65. So from the time after 5 years of college, assuming you graduate, we'll pay for 5, but if you can't do it in 5, you got to cover the rest. And you're still on the hook for what we paid for. Your lifetime earnings from the time that you get out of college until you're 65, and that could be 0. Maybe you never get a job your entire life and you stay in your mom's basement. Well, guess what? We lost on that gamble. Or you go to work, anytime you make money, we get a percentage of that until you're 65.
How in the world did you come up with this idea, dude? It's kind of like, when you look at your pay stub and you see like this whole litany of random deductions. I mean, and you know what they are, but it all adds up. Small pieces add up to, you get your paycheck and your auto deposit, and you're like, wait, what happened to all the rest of the money?
Right.
I think it would just get lost in the shuffle. That's a really brilliant idea, though.
The thing is I don't know how viable it is, because there might be issues with, like, some schools cost more than others. So, does that factor into the percentages? Do we take a higher percentage if you're going to some private, liberal college versus going to a university versus going to community college first and then transferring? And how much interest would you charge to I would assume that there's got to be some kind of formula that would be created that's like, the average person with a 4-year degree makes this in a lifetime in the current situation, and then you would have to pick a percentage that would not only cover the cost of the school that you paid for, you have to make some money off of it. So then how much more interest do you pile on top of it, so at the end of 65 you've made all your money back, plus I don't know how much more you're supposed to, on a typical 30-year mortgage for a house, if you just pay what you're supposed to pay every month for 30 years, how much does the bank get above the price that you paid for the house?
Oh, well, let's do a point A and then point B. I mean, it depends on interest rates, right? So
Sure.
like when interest rates were, say, 3%, on the government closing disclosure, it'd say, you're going to repay the balance that you borrowed, 38% in interest. You're like, that's a smoking deal. And you fast forward to today, and you'll pay, 160% of what you borrowed in interest. Right. I want to go back to the friend and the sizable inheritance. And the business idea. What's going to happen with that?
Well, like I said, he came into a sizable inheritance. He didn't tell me how much it was, but I think it's about six figures. It's about $100,000. That's kind of my guess based on some of the things that he's said to me. But this is a guy that's worked his entire life, mostly in kind of blue collar work, and he doesn't have any business acumen. Like he's not educated in any kind of business. He never ran a business. He doesn't know much about it. He's just like, I've got this money. And I think his attitude is, I can't live off this money. I can't live off $100,000 the rest of my life. But this is my, my chance or my opportunity to do something on my own where I can take control of stuff. And I'm sure he's thinking that if you do the right thing, you can make a lot of money, a lot more than he would make, working a 9-to-5. So if you're asking me, would I partner with him in any kind of way? No, I wouldn't.
No, I meant like, is there a certain type of business that he would open, or is it going to be like go to the casino and put all on black and see how it shakes out at the end?
That's a great strategy.
Hey, YOLO.
Right. He didn't really say too much about a business. The only reason he brought it up to me is because for the last couple of years I've talked about wanting to buy a bar. So that was where that started. Hey, are you still trying to buy a bar? And I told him no.
Do you have a theme or a layout in your head on what this bar might look like?
Well, no, because originally when me and my friends, it's not this friend, it's two other guys. When we first decided to start thinking about this, it was like starting a bar is extremely difficult. I mean, even just getting a liquor license and doing that, it's much easier to buy an existing bar. So we went on to a website that helps people buy and sell businesses, and we were looking around town. There's very few places available, and none of them we were interested in. So we got to this weird spot in our heads. We're like, what are you going to do? You're going to wait around for something to go up for sale. It could be a year, it could be 2 years that that's the place, right? And then even if that does happen, I mean, you have no guarantee that you're going to get it. Somebody else could buy it out from underneath you.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's like we basically said, like, well, that's kind of a dead end. The other option is, well, then you would just open your own bar, but that's much more expensive, much more time consuming.
What about just rebranding an existing one?
What I'm saying, well, when you say, okay, so when you rebrand it, it's not so much that we didn't like the layout of these places. Some of the places we didn't like because, like, one place was in a strip mall, and I am very anti-strip mall. Like, I wouldn't want to own a bar in a strip mall.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's just, I just don't think that it's all that successful. And I know those places do exist. They obviously must make money. I just don't think they do all that well. Plus, I think my experience, bars that are in strip malls typically are divier. And I'm not against a dive bar. Matter of fact, in some ways, I would prefer to have some kind of low-key kind of, divey style bar. But in a strip mall, I think it's just not a dive bar. I think it's just, you're going to probably run into a lot of, problems.
Agreed. Yep.
The other places, the locations were just really bad. One was on Belmont and First.
Ooh.
And
where you packing heat if you want to go visit.
But that included the property. So it's not only the business, the license, and it was a revamped bar. So they redid everything. It looked nice on the inside. Plus 20 parking spaces, the building, $390,000. And we're like, wow, that seems inexpensive. But there's a reason for that, And so that particular bar it's a gay bar, and rebranding that,
it's a tough sell.
It's been around for a long time, so almost like rebranding it might actually hurt you because it has a built-in clientele, and it's not like gay bars are falling out of the sky. I mean, obviously there's a lot of them around here in town, but compared to like regular everyday bars, they're a very, very small percentage.
So if you hit the Powerball, what would your fun dream bar look like?
Well, you know what? He was, when we talked about a bar, he was like sports bar. And he said that he thinks that there's places in town that a sports bar would be really successful if there's not another sports bar, in the area. which I think is probably pretty true. He kind of was going off of a concept when I was living in San Francisco, and this is like 2003. This is a long time ago. It was over 20 years ago. There was a sports bar for the Sunday games. And this is the early days of the Sunday ticket. So it could have been, maybe it was 2005 or 2006, but it was somewhere in that time frame. So they would set up their bar. They had 16 stations. So on a table with a bunch of chairs, and they would have like a little portable bar, and they'd stock it.
That's interesting.
And they'd have kind of a waitress there or bartender there.
Okay.
So if we wanted to watch the Indianapolis 49er game, that's the area where that game's at, and then they have the area over here for the other game, and so it was packed every weekend, because every game was being played. And so, but again, that was in the early days. Like, would you do that now? The place they had was an entire floor of a building, because it was a club at night. So they had this gigantic dance floor in this area. So they would convert it, during the day for.
Sounds kind of like World Sports Cafe back in the day in River Park.
Right, yeah, similar to that kind of setup. And now I think most places, they have all the games technically. I mean, you can go into any bar, and if the game isn't on TV, you could ask the bartender, "Hey, can you put on the Jacksonville Steelers game? No one's watching it." And they usually flip it over.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know how viable something like that would be. And then he wasn't saying, "Oh, we should do that where we create these stations and we'll have this whole Sunday ticket thing." I don't think he was really saying that, but I think he was thinking in terms of sports. Like, could you do something that is maybe a little bit more unique that would attract people? And my first thought was like, well, maybe, but I don't know, considering how many other bars have technically all the games. And I think it would be very rare for you to walk into a sports bar and ask for a game to be flipped on one of the TVs, and they wouldn't do it. So there's enough TVs usually in just any sports bar that, if you want to see the game, they'll put the game on one of the TVs and you can watch it.
I was figuring you more for like an Art Deco, like specializing in 37 different types of martinis type of a place. Like a piano in the corner. The people smoking cigarettes out of one of those long porcelain cigarette holders. Well, like a Dick Tracy vibe.
Well, I mean, yeah, that'd be like old Speakeasy or whatever. Yeah. I wouldn't do something like that. Actually, it's not really my personality. I would actually probably be more leaning towards kind of a sports bar kind of vibe. But I think the reason why I lean towards a sports bar versus, let's say, some sort of, kind of art house style craft drinks or whatever, having some lounge piano player in the back, is that I'm not sure how viable that is. I don't have a shit ton of business acumen, although I do own a hair salon with love. I have learned some things.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know this?
I mean, I know about the hair salon. I didn't know you were a part of that.
Yeah, I'm one of the owners. So.
Oh, look at you! Wow, spreading your wings.
Right. So, yeah. Well, we bought it. That's a funny story how we found that place.
Well, and it's kind of what was really funny is a couple weeks ago when you said you were going down to the salon to help fix some things. There was a water leak and whatnot, and in the back of my mind, I was just thinking, well, Sean's a really nice guy. Like going in, helping a friend out at their building. I had no idea that you had a vested interest in what was going on.
Yeah.
And you wanted to cook half of your day by fixing a leaky sink or something.
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
We bought that place, I don't know, 7 years ago. Yeah, I can get back to that. It's an interesting story how that even happened. But when I think business, there's things that I like and I think would be cool that I like.
For example?
Well, before we get to an example, just say there's things that I like, but I wouldn't necessarily do it as a business because at the end of the day, it's about the bottom line. I want to make money. So I wouldn't be foolish enough to say like, well, I'm into this and I want this thing. If it's not viable or if it doesn't make sense, I'm not taking the risk. It's a lot of money on the line. And the flip side of that is that my inclination is to move towards, well, what does well? Like what does generally well, but also the kind of bar that maybe minimizes problem. So like you could say nightclubs, especially if you can make it a popular nightclub, they kill. But that's a lot of problems.
Lots of problems.
Right? And it would be the same if you would say open a strip club. Right? Like, oh wow, man, I mean, how many people would be coming if you had a great strip club with a bunch of really pretty women and they're naked? Well, I don't want to deal with the obvious problems where I have a staff of, 20 strippers and all the problems they're going to bring, and all the people coming in and drinking and drugs, and God knows, hey, you can't go into the VIP room and do anything illegal, but if the girl wants to and the boss man doesn't know about it, and then you're the one that get, it's that seems like a total nightmare to me. And even if someone said to me, you know how much money those clubs make? I'm just like, yeah, I think I'd rather make something that maybe a little less money if I can eliminate all those problems. I think that's why I leaned towards like a sports bar. I think mainly because I think that they're popular. They're kind of open to everybody. There's nobody that's being excluded. Most people are comfortable going into a sports bar. Not everyone's comfortable going into nightclubs. That's usually a younger crowd. Any kind of gay bar, some people may not be particularly comfortable going into that, right? I think sports bars, especially if you serve food, right? Obviously, it becomes like a sports bar and grill. I don't think anyone's excluded, and I don't think anyone looks at a place like that and says like, I don't know, there's too much football on TV up there. I'm not comfortable going in there. So that's kind of how I think about it. So when I think about these things, I don't think about what I like. I think about what is potential for success with the minimum amount of issues on the other side. So, but yeah, for my friend to say, if he's looking at me, I want to, and I don't know if he was trying to partner with me. I think kind of in a certain degree he would like to, because it's always feels a lot safer and a lot more doable when there's
somebody else is involved.
When somebody else is involved, it's just not him, with his ass in the wind, thinking like, "Oh, I want to start a business." And even if he came up with a business to start from the ground up, it would be very difficult.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
I almost thought you were going to chime in and say you're going to buy like Bitcoin mining rigs or something like that and run them out of the garage.
No. I did have a friend that she mined 6 Bitcoin in about 2008 or 9. This is about 2 weeks ago. She told me she had Bitcoin. I dated a guy who was like 2008, 2009, and he was all into this mining Bitcoin. At that time, you could mine it with just a regular computer.
Right. In
the earliest days. And so I set up a computer and I mined a bunch of Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, how much fucking Bitcoin do you have? She goes, I don't know. The hard drive crashed, and the computer's just been sitting in my house for like the last, maybe 10, 15 years. And I'm like, you have no clue? And she goes, I have no idea how much I have. It's on that hard drive. And she's just like, I got to go. Maybe I'll take it someplace and see if I can, And I was just on her about it. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. You could have like millions of dollars right now. And so she did. She finally, she did it herself. She's like, I can figure it out. And so she figured out how to get the computer up and running again. And she has 6 Bitcoin.
Good for her.
Yeah.
That's a success story.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I had a friend that mined, I don't own any crypto, but he mined Bitcoin right about that same time. And then he ended up using it as a down payment on a house, of all things. And it was like, he had $2,000 into it, maybe 150 grand later. So yeah, good for the people that got in on the early wave. I remember back then I was working at the bank, and it was 8:30 at night. All of the lights in the bank are off. I'm walking around barefoot and down the hallways, and there's this random person that's calling me. I want to say it was 2010-ish, and was telling me I needed to go all in on Bitcoin and trying to explain crypto to me and cryptography and everything else. And I just remember saying, well, he said, put in $10,000 and it'll be one of the best decisions you've ever made. Nope, no, I don't have $10,000 to spend. And who would have thought, fast forward to like these days, what that could have been.
Yeah.
I could have my own aircraft carrier or something. That'd be kind of cool.
You definitely would not be working ever again.
What do they say? Confessions of a crypto oligarch.
Right.
Is that the album or your album title of like your third release?
So did you do any kind of investment in crypto during that? Nothing.
Not in those early days. I did the wrong time to do it, like 2021, 2022. I think it's a very fascinating concept. But it's also, a quick way to lose your ass in a hurry. And I didn't really know what I was doing. But it was more of like, watching, there's a bunch of like crypto podcasts that I would tune into, and I still do pay attention to it to a small degree, but no, I don't own any.
Okay. Yeah, I own some Cardano. I bought it in 2017. I think I bought $500 worth of it, and I think it was like maybe 10 cents or something. And I think it's up to like 50. So it hasn't been a big money maker. I think the highest it ever reached was like $1.30 something. I think I remember it getting over $1.30.
And you were thinking to the moon.
Well, I had a bunch of friends with the first boom in 2017, when I think it actually, things like Bitcoin became kind of not mainstream, but at least known to the mainstream, where everybody's like, what's crypto? Everybody knows about it. And I think Bitcoin shot up to about 30,000. And everybody was, all these coins are getting minted constantly, and everybody's buying all these coins, and 99% of them fail, right? And so at this point, it's like, well, it's too late for Bitcoin. You didn't get in early enough. Lo and behold, if you actually would have bought it in 2017, you would have doubled your money, probably more than that. So it wasn't too late. It may never be technically too late, although I think right now it's about $63,000 a coin. I'm not spending that kind of money on a Bitcoin. So people were looking for a new coin, a cheap coin, something that, is legitimate, that may be the next Bitcoin. I just did some research, and it was very basic research. And I went with Cardano because Cardano was not just a coin, it was a blockchain technology. So, and at the time, according to all the experts, this was a kind of a newer, better blockchain technology. So it wasn't just a coin, it was the technology of their blockchain. Yeah, they're legitimate. I mean, they've been around since I think about, 2015, and they're still going, considering most of these coins are pump and dumps, they're scams. Right. So
I still like the one story of the guy in New York City that figured out how to use Bitcoin and bought a pizza back in the day for something like, I don't remember the number.
I think it was 40 Bitcoin.
Yes.
2 pizzas for 40 Bitcoin.
Yep.
So it wasn't the way I understand that story, and that the day that happened in the crypto world. That's a day. It's like a day that they coined as some, I don't know what it's called. Not like a holiday, obviously, but the
landmark moment.
Yeah, the day of the pizza or whatever they want to call it. But what it was is, the way I understand it is, it was somebody early in on the Bitcoin thing, going places trying to explain this to people who had never heard anything about it. It's completely made up money. Off of the internet in some way, and people trying to explain how to even mine this stuff. They don't even know who created Bitcoin to this day. No one's laid claim. There's a name attached to it, but it's just a pseudonym. It's not an actual person they can identify. And I guess apparently went into a pizza place, wanted to buy pizza, and convinced the owner, it wasn't a chain restaurant. It's just, a mom and pop pizza place, that I'll trade you 40 Bitcoin for, I think it was 2 pizzas. Just try to explain to him what it was. And eventually the owner said, sure, why not? I'll give you 2 pizzas if you give me 40 of this internet money that you're talking about. I don't know.
The most expensive pizzas ever sold.
Right. And who knows if the owner of that pizza restaurant even has those. I would assume he would, because I'm assuming he wouldn't even know what to do with them. So what are you going to spend them? You were barely ready to give this dude 2 pizzas for it. So obviously you can't take it somewhere and go buy stuff with it. Hopefully he still has it. It seems like it's something prior to the wallets where you can store this stuff. It's stored on like a hard drive somewhere, I guess. That's where my friend had hers stored on. Who knows if he stored it on a computer and the computer died eventually because it gets old and he threw it away. It was some laptop or something. And there might be millions and millions of dollars of Bitcoin in some landfill somewhere.
I'm sure that's a case in a lot of instances. The only thing that my family was early adopters of Apple Computer, and this was back in like 1985, 86. Shit. And we had, I still remember, it was, my parents had a Mac Classic, and they had an Apple IIGS.
Okay.
So before it was called Macintosh.
Yeah.
And we had a color monitor, which was revolutionary technology at the time to have a color monitor. And my mom and I was homeschooled growing up, and we were part of the Sacramento Macintosh Power User Group and went to meetings, and we go to Macworld to watch Steve Jobs speak.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. The first big purchase of my entire life was a Mac Performa 6220 CD which is the only computer back then that you could actually plug a coax jack in the back and watch TV.
Okay.
And it had a remote.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is like 1994, 93, 94.
Oh, okay.
And about that time is when Apple decided they weren't going to do hardware and they were going to license kind of like Dell computer and put the operating system on other companies' hardware. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to spend the money that I've been saving to buy Apple stock because it was $1.80 or something back
Yeah, because that was during a low point, right?
That was when Gil Amelio was the CEO,
Yes.
and my mom was like, it's just a internet computer thing. It's a waste of money, blah blah blah. Well, fast forward to today, the one really good investment I made is 2007, 2008. It was right before the iPhone came out.
Okay.
And I used to watch Steve Jobs' keynote every year, and I still remember. I didn't have a stock account. I'd never bought a stock before. And I stayed up until 11 o'clock at night watching the keynote where Steve Jobs says, let me introduce you to this new piece of technology. It's called the iPhone. I couldn't sleep that night. And I actually went first thing in the morning. I went to the bank, opened up a brokerage account and bought, I spent I didn't have a lot of money, but I spent a bunch of the money I did have buying just Apple stock.
Oh, cool.
That I still to this day have never sold. And I actually can't sell it at this point because capital gains would just obliterate me.
Does Apple pay dividends? Mm-hmm. Okay, so on top of the profit, you've got dividends.
I want to say it's like 3,000% gain or something like that. Yeah, wow. It's crazy. When people talk about Bitcoin, I'm like, I don't have Bitcoin, but I have something pretty close to that.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I think that's like when people think about those, I invested in Microsoft like in 1985 or whatever. I remember hearing something, this is years ago, so I don't know what it is today, but it's like if you would have invested $10,000 in Microsoft in 85, you'd have like $150 gazillion today or something like that.
Or Amazon, right?
Yeah, right. And so I think those opportunities are extremely rare. When I think about like, oh man, if you would have invested in Microsoft in 1985, well, I was in the 5th grade, so that wasn't going to happen. So in your situation where you were actually somebody offered you at the ground floor, and it's like, ooh, damn, I should have taken that. I don't think those things happen too often. That's why I never really get upset. Like when Bitcoin explodes, and they're like, oh man, if you would have gotten in it, in 2008, like I'd never even heard of Bitcoin until probably 2015, 2016. I had never heard of crypto. So this wasn't even an option for me, and so, yeah, I didn't have that opportunity. And in my life, the only opportunity that I had, and you go to Amazon, would have been Amazon. When I was in the Bay Area, I moved to San Francisco in 1999. After I graduated, so it was in 99. So the internet boom is just flying off. Mm-hmm. So there's all these .coms that are coming up, and they come up, and they're getting money and they're growing. And of course, at some point, all these venture capitalists realize none of this is making money. So a lot of them collapse, right? So everybody was sort of looking for the golden goose. Like what do I invest in that's going to be this new internet thing? Something's going to hit. And specifically, Amazon exists. It was just a bookstore. Mm-hmm. And there was a competing company. For the life of me, I'm almost positive it was Kazaa, Kazaa.
I remember that.
Okay, so it was it was Kazaa. I was thinking it could have been Kazoo, but it was Kazaa, and they essentially did the same thing. So they formed this company, and they were competing directly with Amazon. This is about the time I had my first kind of real job in journalism, and I wasn't making that much money, especially living in the Bay Area, but I had some money. And by this time in my life, I had invested in stocks. I started investing when I was 16. My grandmother gave me $5,000 while rest of my family and my brother and anybody got a chunk of this money that my grandmother handed out to everybody. They all went out and bought like a car and these types of things. And I'm like, I don't want any of that. I don't even want to touch this money. I want to invest it. And so I went to my mother and she's just like, what do you want to do with it? I said, I want to invest in stocks. So my mother was big in the stock market. And she's like, well, what stock would you want to invest in? In my 16-year-old brain, I said Coca-Cola. And she said, why? And I said, well, because it's soda. They can't fuck that up. Right? Like they're going to be around forever, at least for my lifetime. So I'm confident that I won't lose my money. I didn't understand anything about dividends or anything. I just, Coca-Cola seemed like a good bet. So I invested when I was 16. I didn't really invest again until probably like my early 20s after I went to LA and I did a bunch of stuff in Los Angeles and I was living hand to mouth. So when I went back to college, and I was working part-time, so I was trying to throw money here and there. I was trying to do the whole, like, is there some sort of like penny stock that's going to might explode and whatnot. But when I went to the Bay Area, and that's when the internet was just starting to really get big, yeah, I wanted to buy some stocks. And so I picked between Amazon and Kazaa. I put money into Kazaa. As we all know, Kazaa's long gone, and so is my money. Should have bet on Amazon. However, the one thing I did hit on was this was also during the time when the microbrew craze started. So there are all these small companies popping up. Most of them, a majority of them, they're not public companies. They're just microbrews. You had your Budweisers and your Coors, and I went with the same concept I was thinking in my head with Coca-Cola. Like, I'll invest in Budweiser. They own every damn beer on the planet, right? They can't fail. So, and everyone drinks. So no one's going to stop doing that. And I started thinking, like, well, wait a second. Budweiser only pays dividends once a year, not every quarter. And so I'm like, well, maybe I should rethink this. And with the microbrew craze going on, I'm like, what about an up-and-coming microbrew? And I'm starting to think like the .com thinking, like find some small microbrew that's going to be the next Budweiser. And I know that's not how it works. I know that now, but at the time I'm thinking like, is there going to be an explosion of one of these companies? But none of them were public. The only beer company I could find that I thought was a beer that wasn't already a big brand that was available was Sam Adams, Boston Beer, $7 a share. And Sam Adams at this point had some real ground. Like, they had commercials on TV. They were a legitimate up-and-coming beer. Okay. And I'm thinking, like, people like it. It seems to be, at least on the face, better quality than like your Bud or your Coors. They position themselves kind of like a microbrew, but they're making macrobrew moves. Like, you know, I don't see too many microbrews even today that advertise on television, right? So I said, I'm going to buy a bunch of Sam Adams. And I almost made the biggest mistake. I bought it, and I think I bought $2,000 of it at $7 a share. It was my entire wad. And money I had, I bought it. And I think this was 1996 or 97-ish. No, it had to be like 99. I was already in the Bay Area. And so I just, buy it. And I never looked at my stocks. You know, they get dividends, and maybe once every year or two, I'll pull up the portfolio and like, oh, I got so many more shares, all right? So I think it was probably a year, maybe a year and a half later, I look at the price, and I think, and I'm going by memory, I think it was at about $20. So I'm like, sweet, I've doubled my money, and it's just going up. And so I go on to my portfolio. I don't have any more shares than what I originally bought. And I'm just like, what? I call my mom. I'm like, hey, you know, I bought this Boston beer like a year and a half ago, and I don't have any more shares. And she's like, well, they probably don't pay dividends. And I'm like, I thought stocks paid dividends. And she goes, no, not all stocks. Some don't. And I'm like, shit, I thought they all paid dividends. Right? And she's like, no, they don't all pay dividends. And so I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to keep it, you know. But I thought about selling it. I'm like, well, fuck that. But I kept it. And here's where, I could have made a fatal mistake. At one point, and this would have been 2000 and like, maybe 2000 and, I was living at the Iron Birds. Would have been 2010, right? And again, I may look at this stuff, but I wasn't paying super close attention. And my mom calls me up and she's like, have you looked at your Boston beer stock? You still have that, right? I said, yeah, I have it. And she's like, you should look at it. It's gone up quite a bit. And I looked at it. It was like $200 a share.
What in the world?
So I was like, what? And I'm kind of trying to do research, and it's not saying anything. It's just steadily moved up. And now it's like $200 a share. So now I'm thinking like Budweiser at this point, I think was only like $125 a share. So I'm just like, they've peaked. I know Boston, by this point, Sam Adams is no longer a microbrew. It's, you know, a major kind of brand. And I'm just like, well, I got to sell this. Because how much higher is this going to go? I'm not even getting dividends off any of this shit, right? And I was going to sell it. The only reason I didn't sell it, I fucking just forgot about it and just didn't do it. And a couple of days later, it just out my head. I ended up selling that stock for $1,400 a share.
Wow, dude, that is a crazy story.
That is a
crazy story.
And I think it peaked at 1,800. I don't know what it's worth now. I think it's like 11. So it's definitely gone down. But I think the last time I looked was about 11. I mean, you can look it up right now. But
that's wild. Good for you, man. That's awesome.
So I didn't hit on Amazon, but I hit on Boston Beer. And again, but when people ask me, because over my life I've made quite a bit of money in the stock market. But again, I've been doing this now for 30 years, longer than 30 years. So yeah, shit grew over a long period of time. But when people are like, wow, you've made this much money, or I tell them the Boston Beer story. And I have another story where I made a shit ton of money off of COVID. And people think like they're asking me for advice. Like, what should I invest in? And I'm just telling them, here's all these great blue chip stocks. They pay good dividends. And they're like, I won't make any money for 20 or 30 years. Well, no shit, bro. Would you think that I'm like every day waking up and just finding some dollar stock and in 2 months it's worth, $3,000 a share? And it's like, well, you hit on this one or that one. And I'm like, yeah, over the span of 30 years, I've hit really on 3 stocks like that.
That's a good story, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy for you. That's awesome. When are you going to buy your first helicopter?
Shit. So I don't really trip on the Bitcoin. I was never introduced to Bitcoin. My shot was obviously the internet in the prime of first getting a job that paid well, where I could invest a lot of money in a number of different sectors related to the internet. I didn't do a whole lot of it. I was scared of it because I saw companies collapsing and people started losing money. And I'm just like, well, I don't know. Maybe I should stick with the things that are more analog. Beer, analog. It's not digital.
Right.
I don't have to worry about it. And I don't think beer's going anywhere.
Nope. Here to stay.
No.
It's part of human history at this point.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh. So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning into the second episode of the Tilted Table. How you feeling about this, Joe?
That's always a highlight, man. Every day is a good day.
For sure. As long as it's above ground.
On the right side of the list.
That's right. I'm Sean Landon Clark.
Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac. Peace.
We're out of here.